The raid that even Final Fantasy XIV's developers couldn't believe, by Rinon. We've watched the top video. We've watched the DSR video. I'm very curious on my journey of going through the ultimate list from Rinon. Honestly, great videos. Definitely go check out Rinon, especially if you have not. I'm ready to see what this raid is. I hear this is T. I know Burning Battle Axe of the Heavens, I believe, comes from T. So this is definitely something that I have my eye on. I'm ready for this. I'm super ready to see what mechanics are involved in this.
When a new raid tier releases, the best of the best will get together to race. To pit themselves against one another to see who can puzzle solve, optimize every inch out of their jobs, and communicate with their team the best, to eventually defeat each flaw and claim the coveted title of World First. It could take days of long hours, iron focus and grueling consistency checks. Or in this case, weeks. This is the story of a world race so intensely close that the victor of one of its bosses was decided by less than 1 single minute.
That's wild.
One with a victory so impressive and unexpected that even Square Enix themselves couldn't believe it had happened as soon as it did. This is the story of the second coil of Bahamut.
No. Interesting. I'm interested in this then. I thought that this was T, but honestly, Coil of Bahamut, I have not seen it on higher tiers. I'm ready for this. This guy, the fact that he's future-proofed is honestly hilarious to me. Even if you go into him unsynced, the fact that he is future-proof to hell, I think he damage gates, right? Like, you do enough damage to him in such a brief window, and he kind of just, like, panic max damages or something. I don't remember what he does specifically, but the fact is, like, even unsynced, this guy's future-proofed. He's kind of wild.
It's gonna be a tight one.
I will be collapsing in B parts.
Deliberately.
I need big news.
Yes!
Too powerful.
Yes!
Congratulations.
Bye, Nail.
Fucking good job, guys.
This video is sponsored by Ragnarok M Classic, the official authorized return to classic MMO experience, available on your mobile devices. Unlike the majority of free-to-play titles nowadays, there are no pay-to-win shortcuts or cash stores containing all of the desirable drops. Instead, everything is earned through the in-game currency Zenny. You feel rewarded for all the time you spend adventuring, grinding monsters and exploring the rich world, as everything that drops, gear, cards, materials, headgear, can be bought or sold at the exchange, as well as traded in the thriving player market.
So I want to put it out there because I've had to talk about this recently. I'm actually part of the problem when it comes to MMO, like RuneScape, right? Buying bonds. Because just before Jagex did their whole EOC2 thing, like, I bought quite a few $100s of bonds to make sure I was able to actually kit myself out in, like, Tumakin's Resplendent set. I went ahead and I got a couple really good things like Boa Last Guardian and stuff. I am absolutely part of this problem. So, this is one of those things where, like, I get where people come from. And, like, RuneScape and I have a weird relationship where, like, I don't know. I've just enjoyed 14 far more, if I'm being completely honest. Which is sad, because I was really hoping Evolution of Combat 2. We're going to see what the late game changes do. We're going to see how that changes the experience. But it was not good so far. It really, really killed my my time to kill and stuff, and certain things like Sanctum of Rebirth. And that's without even getting to hard content. I just don't have the same levels of fun that I do in something like 14 dodging mechanics and stuff, which is really unfortunate. But there is a vast amount of players that do want an experience where you can grind up through this, who do view the WoW token or view RuneScape bonds as very much bad for the game. And I agree, in many ways they are they are bad and toxic to the games that they're attached to, right? Any game's going to have RMT. Let's be honest. Let's be completely honest. Like, RMT is always going to exist. There will be, in some way, shape, or form, someone willing to farm out the mats and the gold, being willing to take it for a price or a trade, right? That's just how that works, right? Not to say to do it, but what I am saying is that is just a reality of the game, therefore leading a, like, legal RMT value, there's a legal avenue for it through, like, bonds and, like, the WoW token. But it very much does... It very much looks like there are people who want a game like this. And I'm glad that there's a game like this that does appeal to those people. And I think it is very damaging, as myself, buying hundreds of dollars of RuneScape bonds. I think it is very damaging for someone like me to come into a game, buy a bunch of bonds, and then, you know, profit and not stick with the game. I can't imagine it looks good for metrics. But then again, I guess it depends on what they consider good metrics, if it meets their bottom line, etc. Sorry, overly long explanation. This is to point out that a lot of people do want something like this, and I think a mobile experience, it could be good.
The game takes place in the rich world of Midgard, including busy, lived-in towns, wide open plains, winding forests, and mysterious dungeons rife with challenging battles to attempt alongside your friends or guild. The original 6 classes from Ragnarok Online are all here and faithfully recreated, and each features their own skill tree and progression track. There's also a real-time class-changing system so that players can carefully plan and strategize for the needs of their current challenge. There's tons of quality of life too, such as offline battle, allowing you to optimize your progress whilst you're away from the screen living life.
We're gonna talk about the shape of this map. We're just gonna move beyond that. We're just not going to okay, never mind.
Click the link in the description to download Ragnarok M Classic today, the authentic Ragnarok Online experience based on gameplay. Thank you so much again for sponsoring this video. A Realm Reborn was a time of experimentation for the developers.
I think A Realm Reborn is a really interesting time. I look back on it, I definitely have my issues with the pacing and stuff, but like, it really was at an interesting time. 2013, right, for 1.0, which, and then obviously A Realm Reborn when Yoshi P resurrected Final Fantasy 14, right? Like, it does a lot of things, it tries a lot of things, but it's very much A Realm Reborn. We don't really, and I noticed this when playing through, we really start to see the modern game take shape about Stormblood. Because then you go from Stormblood into Shadowbringers, and the trials, you know, get a little different, right? And then Endwalker, now Dawntrail, and especially going into Evercold 8.0, like, we start really seeing the modern game take shape about Stormblood. It really the way I look at it is like ARR resurrected 1.0, did something with it, and then Heavensward was the capstone on it. And then we get into Stormblood, Shadowbringers, Endwalker, right? Then we start getting into the game as we know it.
Content structure, timing, and design philosophy wasn't yet set in stone. With the release of 2.0 had come the binding coil of Bahamut, the continuation of a story that had literally been used to take down the servers of the original failed game. And
what's Wind Up Dalamud from? I saw someone with the minion the other day. I know there's minions. I don't think they're tied to 1.0, but I don't remember what they're tied to. It's Wind Up Dalamud. I know there's Wind Up Bahamut and Wind Up Louisoix. And if I remember correctly, Louisoix and Wind Up Bahamut have an interaction with each other. I love minion interactions. But I know there's a few things that, like, you reasonably can't get anymore. I was very lucky to get my Hydaelyn and Zodiark idols because I was able to actually find, like, sealed product from a seller and was able to order that. So I was very lucky to find that. But things like certain emotes and stuff are just lost forever.
The first raid aiming to entice players to make FF14 their mainstay home. What had resulted was mixed, all in all. The race had gone on for over 2 months before World First had been claimed, the unfortunate result of a slew of bugs that had taken the servers for the final boss down for weeks.
Aww.
A problem mechanic that was seemingly impossible, and quite simply, inexperience.
Are they playing Black Mage?
It was seemingly impossible for weeks. of a slew of bugs
No, they're not playing Black Mage.
that had taken the server
What are these? What is the physic? Or is that a debuff they're getting? I feel like I recognize the triangle, but I can't place what it is.
impossible and quite simply inexperience.
Oh, the Dalamuds from before Meteor OST. Man, if there's still a sealed copy, those are probably really expensive.
Despite that, it had shown promise, a spark of what raiding in this game could be under the right circumstances. Interesting puzzles, engaging coordination, and some fantastic set pieces. The magic was evident, and it left the community eager to see what Square Enix would cook up next, and to witness the continuation of a narrative saga that meant so much to so many. If you want to see how the race to World First for the Binding Coil went, I released a long-form video just like this surrounding it, and I'd recommend checking it out. It provides colour, context, and an interesting story to boot. And if you want more long-form looks into FF14's past, please do consider subscribing.
Dude, I've honestly enjoyed these long form. I've honestly enjoyed these videos. I actually really like being able to sit down and like watch and analyze the thing over the course of like an hour or two. I genuinely enjoy it. The issue is that YouTube does not enjoy it. And honestly, I'm surprised that Rinon doesn't have a higher subscriber count than they currently do. Like, please, definitely go check out the original content.
With the launch of the remade game a success and player count rapidly rising, all eyes were locked firmly on the future. In patch 2.1, the first ever Alliance raid, the Labyrinth of the Ancients, was released, after having been delayed from the initial 2.0. It presented an easier challenge than Binding Coil, with far less obligation.
I'm trying to remember. I don't think... Have mechanics actually been changed? I know at this point, with how we are in power creep, like 7.0 Dawn Trail, when Viper still had Gash, like its dot, we could actually phase Amon before Curtain Call. I've gotten close a couple of times. Actually, the other night, we got close. I think he was sub 10% by the time Curtain Call was ready to actually fire off. But, like, I don't, like, honestly, because of how gear sinks down, it's not going to be surprising if by, like, I don't know, let's say, like, 8.5, if we're actually phasing him consistently. 8.3, 8.5, I could totally see that. Even then, gear score right now, legacy content, I can do a level 90 dungeon right now as a level 100 tank, and I can solo it, as long as there's a mechanic that doesn't get in my way that actually just, like, instant kills me. I have done P11 normal solo. I had to do it as warrior for the sustain. I think I could probably do it as paladin. Like, at that point, it's just armor value and sheer, like, regeneration numbers, right? Like, the gear differential and level discrepancy is just, it's getting so vast now that it is helping to trivialize older content.
And served to whet the appetite of those that were hesitant to dip their toes into the main event. As the promotional cycle for patch 2.2 begun, with it scheduled to go live just over 6 months into the game's life cycle, Yoshida started to candidly discuss the hotly anticipated second raid wing. He grandiosely stated that this second installment would be the hardest dungeon in the game, instilling excitement and fear in equal measure, considering the length of the previous tier's race. The second coil would also require a completion of the Binding Coil to enter in the first place.
I mean, that's honestly normal for content, right? If I want to do Dancing Mad Ultimate, right, I need to make sure I do Arcadian Savage, right? Simple as.
If you wanted to see the continuation of the saga, you had to beat the first. A contentious decision considering its difficulty, but new gear and freshly added echo buffs eased its requirements substantially. But this tier would be nothing like the first. By the group's own admission, in Blue Garter's world first clear of turn 1 versus ADS and Caduceus, there were group members that didn't even know they had a silence. When it
Neat. That actually raises an interesting question. What stops echo farming? Is there a timer tied to that? So, like, obviously, if you fail the duty, right, like a subsequent number of times, your echo increases, right? So, what stops me from, say, provoke boss kill wall, next run provoke boss kill wall, next run provoke boss kill wall? Cool, we're at like 300% echo. I know there's a mechanic that stops that. I don't know what the mechanic is. I think it's a timer. Like, you have to actually, like, play the game, right? Like, you have to actually play a certain amount before the echo will actually, like, register. Because, I mean, wouldn't that make sense otherwise to just, like, throw yourself into the kill wall, like, 3 to 6 times, or however long it takes to get max 3? HP thresholds need to be reached before. That would make the most sense. So that would prevent snowballing. Like, there are built-in mechanics to prevent what I'm describing. So that would make sense.
Would have helped them astronomically to do so. In the face of so many new jobs and actions, there was an overwhelming lack of comfortability and knowledge. These 6 months had acted as a training arc, and combat expertise had resultingly soared. Raiders were pushing out more damage, using their defensive tools more efficiently, and had drastically improved their situational awareness.
I literally know this buff bar is so foreign to me. What is going on here? Is this each of the summons? No, I'm sorry. Okay, the top one's a pet bar specifically. Okay, that makes sense. I don't even recognize half these symbols. I don't know what that one is. It is so weird because I'm so used to like late Endwalker through Dawn Trail. I'm so used to the bars and buttons we have, but I know we used to have abilities. Like Astra used to get like haste, I think. Chitin, but Chitin was technically rolled in the Samurai Kit. I think that was an Endwalker decision. It is so interesting to go back and like hear about and see things that people in the era experienced. Somebody had like 3 dots back then. That's so wild to think about. Because I'm used to a class maybe having a single dot. Like, they've really moved away from those.
They were beginning to build an understanding of the ways that FF14 liked to throw difficulty at them, and learning how to break it down to overcome it faster than before. Warrior, a tank previously considered borderline useless, had received sweeping changes in the prior patch as well.
I mean, honestly, even in current content, I would still consider Warrior at 50 kind of useless. I don't think Warrior really gets its game plan going until like 55 or whatever, when it actually starts getting bloodwetting. Which, once again, like going into Heaven's Ward is the capstone for A Realm Reborn, because we actually start getting job identities. Paladin starts getting like Clemency, Divine Veil. Warrior gets its bloodwetting, right? Like, but that's with the current bars. I know nothing about the rotation and the hot bars at the time here. Although looking at it, doesn't seem like much has changed, because I tried redoing with my new control scheme that I have. I tried redoing my Warrior bar recently, and it actually hurt to try to think about the rotation. Like, Warrior is very much turn your brain off, and the fact that I was applying logic to it hurt my brain. It was very funny. I think I was doing it on stream, actually. Oh, this is weird. This is like, it's so strange looking back. Like, I can recognize some things. I don't know what that one is. I don't think I know what that one is. Obviously, there's Provoke. I don't know any of these abilities. It is night and day. I cannot put a name to half these skills.
Initially fashioned as a healing tank, lacking varied defensives but given abundant self-heals in recompense, it just didn't fit with the way encounters were designed. It was too weak.
Interesting.
Holmgang, initially just a bind, now gave the user invulnerability to death for a period, and they gained a powerful damage reduction on their attack repelling Vengeance.
That's so weird. So you mean Holmgang used to not be an invuln? So that would also mean that potentially, as they've worded this, like, not all tanks got invulns. That's so strange to me. Oh, this is fascinating to hear. Oh, that's so weird.
It became a counterpart to Paladin that was different, but fulfilled the same responsibilities in an equitable way. Monk, too, received buffs that were intended to bring it back in line with its powerful co-melee, Dragoon.
Ah, there it is! There's the funny gauge! I didn't know we had 3 gauges. Okay. Yeah, we had HP, because we still have HP and MP, but they just completely omitted that 3rd gauge. They completely got rid of TP. I thought that TP was like you would have 2 bars, right? You would have like HP and MP, but if you're playing a physical class, it was replaced with TP. No, you just had 3 bars. Oh, wow. Okay, now it makes more sense why people hated this, especially hearing about like Sprint and stuff consuming it. Oh, wow. Oh, this was a very different game. Okay.
Dragoon had become almost indispensable, as groups had clocked on to and taken advantage of the piercing damage debuff that it provided to bards, with bards being one of the most regularly slotted and often doubled up jobs. The two made for a powerful combination. As experience grew, so too did the competition. The number of engaged raiders swelled with the player count, and whilst Blue Garter had enjoyed a fairly uncontested marathon to the finish line in the latter stages of the Twintania push, it was unlikely that the same situation would repeat here. Hours would be longer, expectations would be higher, and the pressure to perform would be greater than ever.
I'm pretty sure I actually need to go back and grind Twintania too, which is the unfortunate part, because Twintania has it's a mob drop, which you can't get mob drops unsynced from what I'm hearing. So technically you have to get like an 8 stack together and actually run the content synced in order to get it. And I'm like, oh, one day.
Blue Garter was still going strong, and as the current world first title holders were expected to be the favourites to take the win this time as well.
I never necessarily thought or felt that we were the best mechanically at the game. Like, there were other players across different FCs, different servers who were probably just way better at the game than us. But what I tried to really kind of focus in on between first and second coil was, like, as a group with like a team approach, we could lift everyone up and kind of approach things in a smart enough way to maintain an advantage going into second coil.
They were intending to double down on a strategy that had paid dividends for them in the binding coil, which was to field multiple statics within the same banner and provide help to one another through sharing strategies.
I might honestly start doing this. I might honestly have vertical bars on the side. I really love seeing how people customize their HUD and stuff. Yeah, I might throw a couple bars on the side for consumables and any macros or markings. Although I don't think the markings would make sense anymore, because ever since T, we can't mark mid combat because of stuff that happened inside T.
Substitute players when needed, and moral support.
The pressure was on more for the second call. I definitely remember we were a lot more serious about the second call than we were the first one. I remember saying, like, when we went into first call, it was just like whoever we had, basically, right? Second call, we definitely prepared a lot more.
Both parties would be extending their hours, and whilst the majority of the members from that Twintania World First Clear remained in the free company, some would either be abstaining from the race entirely or splitting off in their own directions. So these new rosters in their current iterations were still, at this point, untested, and there was no real predicting what would happen.
It's impossible to go back to that time when we just didn't know what the game was. We didn't understand enough about the game. Effectively, we were able to afford the first large house on Excalibur. So
Wow.
we were trying to balance out filling the FC coffers, preparing for just to have the house because it's like a cool status thing for the FC. Like, it was something that everyone could share and as part of the community. One of the things that we struggled with throughout the history of the FC was kind of balancing out the community aspect of the FC versus the kind of more hardcore progression-oriented side of the FC. So when we finished Binding Coil and we were going to second coil, we tried to be more structured and regimented about our approach and process. So we were definitely more serious. We felt the pressure. We realized that the game had a much bigger audience, that there were way more players.
But on the North American data centers, a second group was rapidly rising to prominence. Ultros-based Collision, who had been the 6th team to defeat the Binding Coil, were gearing up for a much more aggressive push this time around. Using their experience in World of Warcraft Cutting Edge, they were hoping to dethrone BG and claim it for themselves. Over on EU, Phoenix-based Shinra shared these lofty aspirations. They had spent these months speed killing and re-clearing, optimizing their damage to be as consistent and perfect as possible.
I mean, honestly, like, I love this, though, because I do stuff similar to this, not in any, like, real content, right? Like, I mean, I'll queue into Arcadian over and over and over again, right? I actually, I've been trying to hunt for the mirror orchestration role for a hot minute. I have been trying. I've lost that on, like, a 95, I think. And then last night I actually got it to pop in queue, and then I won it on 57, dude. I was so happy. Oh, finally got my mirror orchestration role. But that's the thing, is like I'll just queue back to back into duties, right? Like I'll farm out a duty, I'll farm out a trial or a raid just to optimize it, right? Like what's one of the things I've mapped out? If I'm running Black Mage competently, and that should put me at 2 or 3 or 4 if the off tank also has their tank stance up, I should reasonably be popping my second mana font and able to at least get, I think, maybe a single Paradox and maybe 3 Fire 4s out by the time Red Hot and Deep Blue split, right? Where they become untargetable and they do the big AoE, right? But like, I mean, that's just how I enjoy playing the game. I like doing a thing over and over and over again with a kit that I know how to do until I can do it optimally, right? And I mean, it's done some things so far. It's very much been something that I feel has improved how I play the game, but I'm still not on the tier of, Savage Raiders. It's a work in progress, but I'm also trying to brute force thousands of hours of experience in a few hundred.
As they hoped to earn their place in pole position in the second coil race. The Japanese data centers had produced their own promising race team too. Their name was Lucrezia. With these and many more groups climbing in the ring, it would be a truly international competition.
Oh, dude, what is this Black Mage rotation? We got Surecast. I don't even know what some of these spells are. I don't know what this one is. Looks like a bow. I thought that... Oh, wait a minute. Wasn't there a thing where you could get, like, other classes' skills or certain other classes' skills? That's it. I don't remember how that system worked. This one looks really cool. I don't know what this one is. 2 Ethereal Manipulation, probably bound to different keys, I would assume. I don't know what that one is. That might be a consumable or something, or it might be just a stop attack button. I know Lord of the Rings Online has one. Oh, this looks next to nothing. No, this one's maintained pretty consistent, actually. A lot of buttons here are still kind of here, right? You have your transpose. Did they get a cure? Is that what that is? Did Black Mage get a cure? What's happening here?
Far enough away from launch that even non-legacy servers had been afforded the time to truly reach an even playing field, it was expected that this race would be tighter than ever. One big change, announced and explained beforehand, was that whilst Binding Coil had 5 turns, the second coil would receive just 4. This sounded like a reduction in content on paper, though in reality it really wasn't, and all of those involved knew that it wouldn't contribute to the length of the race in any meaningful way. The third turn of the initial tier was little more than a glorified jump puzzle, scenery with a pretty label, and its inclusion had been confusing and somewhat disappointing as players learned that actually their 5 battle raid did not include the purported 5 battles.
I think it was just a bunch of mob pulls, right? It was a bunch of like Dark Matter slugs. Maybe there was a boss at the end. I don't remember.
As a result, Square Enix did away with it entirely, and have done so for the rest of FF14's life cycle in the decade plus since.
Well, so we see other games kind of cut down on that too. We had Lord of the Rings Online. We had the Race of Fornost, right? In the North Downs, and you used to have to actually traverse to the boss gates within Fornost, right? But last time I was playing it, like, because I have the VODs over on the gaming channel doing the wraiths and making it to the North Downs, like, that's just gone. Like, you can go to the gates if I remember correctly, but you no longer have to, like, traverse the actual city of Fornost to get to the gates to actually do the wraith fights. Like, that's all via Instance Finder now. So it's so wild. Roll actions were very silly. Never even heard of roll actions. We still have roll actions, right? Yeah. So I guess we had more. I guess they've diluted them over the years. This is an interesting time capsule. I'm loving this.
Turns 6 through to 9 would be the gauntlet this time around in its entirety. As March 27th, 2014 approached, the confirmed release date for patch 2.2 through the Maelstrom, all eyes were looking forward, hopeful for glory. Mood in the community was hopeful. Despite its issues, the first release had shown so much promise, and given these extra months to refine their craft, many were confident that the challenges the developers could muster would be an absolute blast to solve. But there was concern too. Would it truly be harder than the 2-month slog that was Binding Coil and Twintania, as Yoshida had stated? If raiding in FF14 was to always be so long-winded and buggy, would it spell doom for the future growth of the raiding scene? More than that, would Blue Garter maintain their crown, or would the newer powers across the various regions rise to snatch it from them?
I think it's really interesting to think about how these concerns were all the way back in A Realm Reborn, when A Realm Reborn was current content. And I mean, I think we still have kind of these issues today. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, people will day one prog, like, EXs and stuff. I did a little bit of 7.5's trial, the EX. I did a little bit of prog on that, like, when it launched. But then, like, our off-tank just kind of dipped, and then I had to, like, yeah, I'm going to go to bed, because I was up literally before, like, the servers went back online for 7.5 to go live. So, like people still do it, and I mean, obviously, people wait for Hector Strat and stuff to come out before they start attempting the EX, right? I mean, like, it's got its own loop, but like, I wonder if the raiding scene has gotten bigger, has stagnated, or like gotten larger. I don't know what the answer is. Like, clearly we have interest. Like, clearly we have a lot of teams, right? Especially going off of like the top video, right? Like, there's a lot of teams who are interested. But if we were to look at the percentage of players who play the game who have even attempted this kind of content, I wonder if it's going to be the same, like the same amount of players, like let's say like 20%. That's just throwaway number, right? Let's say it's 20% of players back in 2.2 ready to do this, right? Versus today, 20% of players doing, I don't know, Dancing Mad, like Ultimate. I don't know. I'd be very interested to see. I don't even know what those numbers would be. It'd be interesting to really see like where the raiding community is at. Has it grown? Has it shrunk? Obviously, the players have changed, right? It's also interesting because we don't know how many players from back then still play the game. I'm sure some of them do, but a lot of people have moved on, especially a lot of 1.0 players. They moved on long ago. I don't know. It's a very different era.
In the crucible of a new raid tier, anything can happen. As it would turn out, and raiders would discover later down the road, Second Coil would include a twist that would make it last almost as long as Twintania had, but not quite in the way that anybody had expected. For now though, their energies were firmly fixed on the login button as servers went live, and with it, the raid was available and progression began. We left off directly after the felling of Twintania, clasped upon Bahamut's palm. The expedition had ended in an unexpected way, as in the chambers following this fearsome battle, the adventurers stumble upon Bahamut's head, hooked up to seemingly Allagan technology, and possessing a crystal that mimicked a beating heart. The dragon lived. What was more, they saw in the distance a figure that looked suspiciously like Louis Soir, the Archon that had guided the Warrior of Light's way through most of 1.0, and presumed long dead. In the Second Coil of Bahamut, the foray primarily aims to prevent Bahamut's restoration by deactivating the 3 titular coils bound to it, so that the past can finally be left where it belongs. In turn 6, they travel within Dalamud's shadow in the Shroud, to the entrance of the coil itself, but the way is far from easy. In a continuation of the design philosophy from the initial raid series, Second Coil is comprised of more than just a sequence of boss arenas.
What are these stats? Like, so I know these are the stats, right? Like, these are the actual, like, combat stats that you actually, like, do need. So, like, strength, dexterity, vitality, intelligence, mind, and piety. I don't know. Do we have this in the modern game? What is this specifically supposed to indicate? on above the party gauge.
Instead, before being able to see what boss awaits them at the end of the turn, they must traverse the winding walkways and face the native wildlife, finding a way to break through to reach the final destination.
I've only ever done this unsynced, so I really love the different perspective here.
In turn 6, there is no door boss or DPS check like the ADS that came before. Instead, there are a series of dark matter clusters blocking the way that must be destroyed. But in response to movement close to them, and as a defensive maneuver, they begin to repeatedly spawn golems until killed, upping the tempo and making the whole affair a desperate race against time.
So it's Destiny 2 logic, where if you keep throwing enemies at the player, it effectively puts them on a pseudo time limit. Like, it puts them on a timer. Eventually, there will just be enough thralls on screen and enough acolytes that it will just cause the player to wipe.
They don't pose much of a threat though, and frontrunners had no issue dealing with them in short order and pushing ahead to face the main threat, Rafflesia. The Rafflesia is known as the corpse flower, one of the largest flowers in the world, named for the stench of rotting meat it emits in an effort to lure insects, which will eventually become its sustenance. In Final Fantasy XIV, the corpses would be the raid if they aren't careful. Just a few attempts in and it was clear to every group tackling it that Second Coil would be an utterly different beast than the one that came before.
Holy buff bar under the boss. That's like an alliance raid bar.
Mechanics had more variance and volume than before, and whilst they weren't too difficult to understand and were being quickly solved, if this is the first turn, with 3 more difficult bosses waiting in their future, some of the more experienced players were worried about what might lie ahead, and if it truly could wind up being tougher than Twintania. The opening blows introduce what would become the core loop of the encounter. First, simple conal swipes that weaken the tank taking them, and thorny vines which would latch onto players and tether them together. Those bound to one another would need to spread away in order to snap the vines before they take their toll. Despite being a mechanic that has been replicated countless times in the years since, this was the first time a simple tether break had been implemented in the game.
So this is like, what is it? Is it Black Armory from Destiny 2? Like, what was so special about Black Armory? Oh, you had to throw the ball at the thing. What was that it? But it was the first time you had to throw the ball at the thing, is how I've heard it described, right? I did Black Armory very briefly back in Season of Arrivals before it got content vaulted, before it got sunset to get Izanagi's Burden. So, like, I had a little bit of experience with it, but like, it's just that perspective shift where like, but okay, you just throw a ball at thing, but it's the first time you had to do the thing, right? Because I can say, yeah, I've done this in, Heaven's Ward Vault how many times where you have to break the tether, right? But this is the first time you're seeing this, so there's a little bit of a different context here.
Even that was a fresh new challenge for 2014.
That's
But
wild.
more dangerous were the dark matter bulbs, which would sprout and grow periodically in groups, lacing the ground in thorned vines that would slow and damage any that stepped within. Aside from being an arena hazard though, these also served another purpose entirely: to protect Rafflesia's targets from one of its main abilities. Floral Trap was by far the deadliest attack in this early phase, choosing a target and signifying it with a dripping yellow marker.
I love that marker. I love seeing it. What was this? I had World of Darkness, the Hydra, I think, has this as well. It was really funny. I was doing World of Darkness because Alliance Raid queue yesterday, and I'm playing Blackbridge, I was casting in the corner. Somebody, dude, like runs completely the other way, but then he realizes that the funny ice circles are going to expand, so he runs right back into me with the stack, and I'm just like, bruh. I love the funny stack.
And then shortly afterwards sucking them in towards the boss, as well as any unwitting party members, without the wherewithal to stay well clear. Then, without giving them a moment to avoid their fate, Rafflesia will devour them.
Actually, that's a really cool way to utilize the slow. I like that.
Those drawn in and devoured aren't killed, later being spat out for heavy damage and a knockback, But what is much worse is that they give the boss a permanent damage up stack.
Oh no!
In being eaten, you make the foe stronger for the rest of the attempt. Using those vines on the ground would slow you, but they would also make you immune to the draw-in entirely. This cycled for the first third of the battle, with ever more complex patterns of tethers and numerous placements of dark matter bulbs, and whilst most of these would repeat for the remainder of the encounter, the moment Rafflesia was reduced below 70%, it would begin to add Blighted Bouquet, which would punish anybody moving when it went off.
Oh,
this
no.
was Ordained Stillness before it was a thing. The bigger addition in this second phase, though, was the Honey Glaze debuff, which would be applied to targets occasionally. These debuffs would attract hornets to the battlefield, which would hungrily eye the honey and attack, and needed to be killed before they hit their enrage.
I think it's really neat to look at this because like a lot of these mechanics are very intuitive and you're like, if this was in modern content, oh yeah, we've seen these things elsewhere, right? Like even a Necron is a trial, right? We have forced light parties if you want to actually hit the 4 plates, right? You know, two groups of 4, you know, ceiling plate 1, 2 and ceiling plate 3, 4, right? Like we have some really we've had some stuff since then. Like to know that this is the inception of some of the mechanics I regularly deal with in normal content is actually kind of wild.
But the honey could be cleansed in one way. Just one. Being devoured by Rafflesia.
Huh.
So the groups that were attempting to find a way through were given a choice. You can pick your poison. Either deal with an ever-increasing number of hornets, kill these annoyances and rip your precious damage away from the boss to do so, or cleanse those debuffs and make the main foe gain damage stacks until the end.
I like that. I like this being a modular mechanic. I have a lot of respect for it.
Most learnt that the latter, whilst painful, was necessary at minimum item level. As the hours rolled by, frontrunners mastered these mechanics too, and entered the final push. This would signal the end of many of the earlier mechanics, forcing players to stick by the decisions they had made in regards to honey cleansing until the end. Replacing their challenges were 3 dark matter slugs. Acidic honeys would also spawn and give a stacking debuff to players that would eventually spell their doom. The trick to this puzzle was to weaken the slugs, which would prompt them to devour a honey of their own to regain HP. This would cause them to grow and deal more damage, but would allow the party to remove the threat of that debuff that would eventually kill them.
Interesting. So you lead the thing to eat the thing. I guess we kind of see this in like how the certain mobs have predatory aspects, right? Like what is it? The funny slugs in the Shadowbringer area, how you can lead it around and it can eat some of the little like axolotl looking things and grow bigger. So we kind of see some of this in just like mob things later down the road, right?
It was a phase of careful target prioritization and awareness, ensuring they dealt with anything Rafflesia had to throw at them, while simultaneously clearing the field of slugs and slimes with painstaking caution. But for raid groups like Collision, Blue Garter and Shinra, those that had seen all of these mechanics successfully but were struggling to juggle them all and push to the end, something had to give. They would either spend all of their time dealing with ads, resulting in Rafflesia's health feeling like an insurmountable wall, or the pins would tumble to the floor, resulting in a black screen. The first one to find a way to break through would claim world first, that much was clear. It was the how that was the problem. They couldn't wait for more gear, and dealing with all those damage stacks and the slimes and slugs was slow going. Pull counts went into the dozens as the hours crept by. Luckily, those hours were not an issue. With so many groups so close, it was all but assured that someone, somewhere, would be moving on to turn 7 in the very first day. Many groups were planning upwards of 12 hours per day to raid in that first week, in pursuit of the coveted title of World First. They knew competition was stronger this time, and they wanted to snatch every advantage they possibly could. The race was becoming exponentially more serious as tiers went by. In the original Binding Coil, 8 hours was seen as a very long day, only to be invested in the first week or so by the most committed cutting-edge teams. This trend of the hours expected for hardcore groups to be able to compete ever increasing was one that would continue on even to this very day.
It really does. And it feels like the raids are getting longer and longer, right? The fact that top and DSR, the fact that people are running out of time off from work and have to withdraw because they physically don't have enough like PTO and vacation days is kind of wild.
The strategy that eventually bore fruit was a risky one, but sometimes a risky play is exactly what's needed to win. Phase 3 beckoned, and by that point it was essential to have removed all honey stacks entirely to prevent bees from disrupting the plan, regardless of how many damage stacks Rafflesia received as a result. Once there, as the slugs spawned, the caster would immediately limit break, destroying them all in one fell swoop. The slimes would spawn shortly afterwards, and the raid would ignore them. From there, it was a race against time. Carve 30% from Rafflesia's health pool before hitting 10 stacks and dying to the potent damage over time, or try again and crit harder the next time.
I see Leroy as the tank, or Leroy. I see you.
In a nail-biting run, eventually it seemed like there was a chance it could pay off, as the percentage ticked down and the debuff ticked up, 8, then to 9. The end was in sight. Party members were dropping like flies, the casters, then the shield healer. The tanks blasted their personal mitigations. 10,000 HP left on the boss. They just needed a few more GCDs. Then, the screen goes black. But it isn't because of a wipe, they have done it. Turn 6 has been defeated on the very first day of the raid tier, and claiming first place is not previous champions Blue Garter, but their American-based rivals, Collision. Collision had taken their inaugural world first and cemented themselves as a force in the second coil. Shortly after Collision, second place was taken by European-based Shinra, and 2 hours after those, one of Blue Garter's group got on the board and cleared turn 6 too. Just a couple of hours separated the top 3, and when races in the past had been decided by days or even weeks, such a small amount of time here meant that any lead Collision had built up could crumble from just one single fumble or confusion on the road ahead. In a testament to the increasing skill level of FF14's raiders though, these 3 were far from the only triumphs over the second coil's first boss in the first 2 days of the raid tier. Over 20 groups by my counting, and in reality likely significantly more if we count the ones that were not reported publicly.
I just looked at the High Allegon set, and the High Allegon set's item level 110. We're looking at 690 for Dancing Mad Ultimate. And this is what? This is pre-number squish too? Because at a certain, I don't know what point it was specifically. It might have been Stormblood. I don't know. Maybe it was Shadowbringers. There was an actual, like, we were doing so much damage, and they had to number squish. Lord of the Rings Online saw that as well. They had to number squish, because I think people were, some certain attacks were doing, 2 to 3 million damage. Destiny 2 had that as well. Edge of Fate. We're going from, dealing 500,000 damage with our super to like, oh, well, that was like 50,000 damage, right? Like, the health, like, number squishes are necessary because, like, I mean, if you do a fireball and it does like 3 trillion damage, does it really make sense, right? I heard it had some impact on UCOB, but I don't know how the number squish affected UCOB, if I'm being completely honest. I'd have to have someone who rated at the time, as well as experience the number squish, if that actually affected the higher tiers of play.
Bested the Corpse Flower and moved on to turn 7. One of the tricks up Collision's sleeve that had helped edge them over to victory was their double caster composition, slotting 2 summoners in the party. Summoner was a job that hadn't been thoroughly tested in A Realm Reborn's first tier due to time constraints. but it had turned out to be a powerful and agile DPS.
I think that just makes me sad because so many people are so sad that like Summoner just exists in its current state. Like, it's one of those that, like, when I actually get around to learning it, because I have it at 100, right? I just need to actually pick it up. It's probably going to bore me if I'm being honest. Like, I really enjoy Black Mage. I very much enjoy Paladin. I feel picking up Summoner is going to make me really sad because I hear it used to be so much better. And, like, complexity doesn't necessarily one-to-one equal good, but I very much hear that Summoner used to be very fun.
Capable of dealing significant single target and AoE damage, move with less difficulty than its direct counterpart Black Mage, and of significance in this encounter in particular, focused a good percentage of its output on its damage over time spells. Whilst it wasn't the deal breaker by any means, and the following groups to claim second and third did not use the same composition, but being able to leave the dot running on Rafflesia whilst dealing with both the Hornet and the Caster LB allowed them to eke out those tiny extra bits of DPS.
I wonder if that's why we also have a reduction in who gets DPS and how many DPSs we get. Not only because, you know, buff limitations, right? But, like, yeah, I could see this. I could very much see this playing a part into why we have so few dots nowadays.
Which in a clear as close as theirs could have just made the difference. The adventurers arrive at the outer coil, an endless procession of azure-lit passageways flickering with the silhouettes of unseen chimeric monstrosities. There, they encounter Nail, who attempts to warn them off before quickly departing.
Yeah, I had no clue who Nail was, because I didn't play 1.0. So, like, I'm just like, who is this, right? And then obviously Nail comes back in the weapon series, right? Ruby weapons specifically. Like, oh, I really need to deep dive a lore video on Nail, because I'm missing so much context.
This was a big revelation. Nail was the main antagonist of FF14's 1.0 storyline, and the battle against the Garlean at Riven Road accompanied the final sequence of patches before those servers went down to make way for redevelopment.
Oh, 1.0 looks so different. Ooh, that is... I will be sad that I'll never be able to get to do this fight. If nothing else for the novelty.
Acting as a capstone party encounter for the initial run. Presumed dead, too. Why were dead people coming back to life inside the coil? The turn starts, and in what...
You know... See, we say this, but you know what I've found recently? Because I was doing all my crafting quests, because I'm actually hiding from my crafting quests and working today. I'm very much hiding from them. I say this while I'm in Cosmic Exploration. But, like, the Alchemist quest line, we just kind of fire and forget that whole sequence, I guess. Because, like, yeah, we just can confirm that just having a bunch of vitality potions, you effectively just RuneScape overload a corpse back to life. Like, that was like the 50 Alchemist quest is like, you know, she comes back, she's revitalized for a brief second before disappearing into ether, right? So he's able to say that he's sorry, right? And then, like, the Heaven's Ward one was very much just like crime scene investigation, right? Just CSI. But then we had like 70 with like Heart Strike being a blade, and like how this blade can like put you in like a state of like suspended like animation. But like if it had both like gems, like it could raise you back as a monster in Undeath. Just gonna pass that over. Just gonna pass over that just necromancy is possible via alchemy in Final Fantasy 14. We just gonna bury that and move on. Just making sure we're on the same page.
Has become tradition at this point. A sequence of trash pack encounters blocks the way to the eventual final boss. They take an elevator through the facility and are accosted by Rogue Lamia's ADS modules and returning foes from the earlier Binding Coil encounters. Giant cobras, in appearance identical to those in Turn 1 and 5, though somewhat less threatening than their boss status counterparts, and Dreadguards, the same ones that one-shot players in Twintania, a malicious callback before the main event. Blocking the entrance to the final sector, at the end of the line, the raid comes across Turn 7's main event, the Lamia Melusine. Much like Rafflesia, Melusine has a number of phases strictly segmented by HP percentage. This was a big departure from more recent FF14 design philosophy, which generally favours ignoring HP percentage in most cases and instead just plays out a sequence of set-piece mechanics one after another in a fixed order, allowing players to do their best to deal damage during the windows presented to them. Percentage pushes are interesting and come with their own set of boons and flaws. It rewards careful and painstaking control of the party's damage output.
I think the most recent trial, 7.5's trial, actually has thresholds, if I understand it correctly. Because I was told that if you actually do the trial, and you actually have good enough damage, you're actually able to like completely phase out entire mechanics. Well, I can't remember what I was running recently. What was I running? I was running something recently. I genuinely can't remember what. It had to have been Endwalker Plus. I don't remember what it was in terms of content though. But what I can say about it was like the boss was like trying to do a full transition, and then it like just like stopped, and then it like went back to a normal arena, but it was around like 20%. And it was like, it shocked me for a second because I was like, wait a minute, there's supposed to be a whole sequence here. But because the boss was like sub 20%, I was able to rationalize it as like, so the way that this is done is that you cannot physically, like, under 20%, the game like safeguards itself because it can't be in that game end state. Like there can't be a boss game end state while in that phase. It was just really fascinating to see the smoke and mirrors that made encounters work like that. I wish I could remember what it was. It had to have been some sort of normal content. It was a boss fight in some capacity, but it was just really interesting to see that see the health gates at play and see how the game safeguards itself.
Rather than simply pumping out as much as possible, always being the best choice at all times. In some moments, it's better to do less damage to ensure a push at a convenient moment, rather than to just zoom fast regardless of the consequence. Finding out what new challenges awaited at each percentage push and how to juggle them effectively became an essential skill in the Raider's toolkit in those early days of A Realm Reborn. But as we had seen in the Turn 5 race, playing too safe in regards to push timings could quickly result in enrage issues further down the line.
Right. So
the first phase features regular cleaves and circular point-blank attacks that must be avoided, as well as fireballs that blast onto ranged players for heavy damage, forcing them into a spread formation to avoid overlapping the...
I'm noticing we also don't have markers here. So this clearly, like, obviously we have like markers above like players' heads, but the actual things that we're used to, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, like I'm not seeing them here. So this had to predate those.
Pain. But really, these are just filler inconveniences to complicate the main mechanic of the phase, and the foundation of Turn 7's challenge, Cursed Voice. Cursed Voice was a debuff that would afflict multiple party members at once, and when it hit 0, it would have them blast out a conal petrify in their line of sight. They had to carefully manage both their positioning and their facing to avoid their allies and Melusine, for if she accidentally caught a stray, she would permanently increase her damage for the rest of the fight.
That kind of reminds me of Phase 3 in Hades EX, right? Where you have to like position yourself certain I guess it's like a very archaic interpretation. I don't know, just don't look at the boss, right? It's, if anything, it's actually more like Skydeep C Note, the mid-boss, the Manta Ray. You'll become a nuisance to your party, so you turn away as you like blast water in a cone in front of you. That's what it's more like rather than Hades EX Phase 3.
The second part of the puzzle came in the form of these Renauds that periodically spawn, hulking Cyclops monsters that will slowly, and with purpose, thud towards whichever player has the bravery to attack them first.
Amazing.
The cursed voice can be turned against them, rendering them stone, removing them as a threat. From there, a single hit will make them crumble.
Bro, that is such a cool mechanic. What? Do we have this in modern content? Dude, that's so cool.
As her health reduces, she adds to this outfit of challenges, a sequence of Lamia soldiers that spawn in tandem and must be prioritized to avoid the overwhelming attacks as they begin to mount after 30 seconds. A new debuff, the Cursed Shriek, like Cursed Voice in many ways, but different. Worse. This time, instead of a simple conal gaze, it will pulsate in all directions like a flood of death, turning those in its path to stone. It spells death for the party in short measure, and there is nothing that can be done to prevent it. At least that's how it appeared at first. Groups quickly put 2 and 2 together, and at last, it all made sense. Why were there Cyclopses spawning constantly? It had to be more than just an annoyance, an extra job for the ranged DPS to excel at in kiting them before they could be petrified. Well, the petrified Renauds acted as an object, and in FF14, objects can be used to line of sight attacks. Using the Renaud was the key. It acted as the stone wall to protect the rest of the party from Cursed Shriek.
I love that. Yeah. So like how you have to hide behind the rocks for like Behemoth, right, in Crystal Tower, which would be of the era, or as my brain defaulted to, hide behind the rocks as the tyrant is, doing tyrant things. You have to hide behind the second set of rocks, right? Like, yeah, this very much feels like Behemoth, right? Drop the rock and then you hide behind the rock to avoid the explosion. Like, that speaks to that mechanic, and we would have had Labyrinth of the Ancients by this point. Yeah, that's...
There were fewer things to parse, to figure out, to like deduce back then, but the landscape of possibility was still pretty broad back then. Like things hadn't been figured out, so turn 7 was a pretty crazy fight, and there will never be a fight like that ever again in Final Fantasy XIV's history.
It's unfortunate.
This became the minigame, often assigned to the bard of the group to juggle in amongst everything else. Kite the Renaud. Keep him away from you and the others. Make sure he gets turned to stone in a convenient place, one that the Cursed Shriek can be easily cordoned off at. Much of the burden of success or failure in an attempt was placed solely on the shoulders of this one player, and the groups with a physical range that adapted and learnt quickly found faster success than others as a direct result. Whilst dual summoners had been such a boon in turn 6, in turn 7 they added an additional foil to affairs that had to be juggled. Because of the number of adds that would spawn, if the caster wasn't extremely vigilant, it was all too easy for their Eggy to automatically retarget to one of those petrified Renauds after killing their initial victim, and set in motion a series of unfortunate events.
I feel like this very much rewards you just playing all classes at a high level, or multiple classes at a high level then, right? Because very much, yeah, turn 6, yeah, Summoner is putting in work, but it is very much not the case, especially if the Eggy aggro is just like going ham on the statues. That is wild.
But they were much more proficient at kiting than a Black Mage could, opening up the group's options drastically. In the third phase, new mobs are introduced, simple threats to be felled before they overwhelm the raid. The arena's rings will begin to glow too, vastly limiting free space. As Melusine grows in desperation, she begins to cast Petrifaction herself, as do her minions, and the chaos grows. The entire fight is one of finding consistency within the confusion. Assembling the puzzle pieces is one thing, and most frontrunners were able to do so in short order, but the execution itself was a far greater obstacle. Day 1 faded into Day 2, and Day 2 into Day 3 without a reported kill. The hours ticked by, and as the number of groups battling Melusine climbed into the dozens, it was surprising to hear such radio silence from those who had spent so many hours fighting her.
Looking back on the fight, I love it. I think it's incredible. I think it's like one of the coolest fights that existed at that point in time in the game.
Yeah, 10-7
looks
is
really
still
cool.
probably one of my favorite fights. I think it's such a simple fight. Like, there's not really much going on, but like you're constantly having to do stuff. You're constantly having to adjust, and yeah, like one mistake basically can completely screw you.
Funnily enough, years later at a fan festival developer panel, Naoki Yoshida and Kenji Sudo would talk about Second Coil's fight design, amongst many other topics, and Sudo would specifically cite the Melusine fight as a learning moment for him. Both the Renauds and the Cursed Voice were amongst his top 3 bad mechanics that had been implemented into the game by 2016, in his opinion, and showed regret for the style of challenge they presented, as well as the advantage they gave to some jobs over others. But that wouldn't help the challengers in the race. They just needed to overcome. For now, it seemed that Turn 7 had the upper hand.
So I guess it depends how loosely you want to interpret this. So like I know trying to look at the Hector guide, right? Because I was looking at M10S, right? And I guess this comes back to positioning, where like one of Red Hot's things that he does is the furthest player from him will be designated as taking that tank buster. If you want to loosely interpret this, technically that would be a mechanic that most jobs would not be able to fulfill, right? Like, we obviously know the intent behind this, the context behind this is like, yeah, this requires you to, you know, especially for melee DPS, right? You're going to have to look away. You're going to have to lose your melee uptime to be able to, you know, look away, and so the cone doesn't hit your party, right? But I mean, we see a less punishing version in like Lindworm, right? Like M12, where like, yeah, he does the thing where like the gross stuff attached to you will do the conal in front of you, and you're supposed to position in such a way that you don't cleave your teammates, right? So, like, we technically have less punishing versions of it if we're talking about strictly just a, you know, you need to look away, you need to be able to position in a way where you don't inconvenience your party members, a la Sky Deep Cena, right? You become a nuisance to your party. I think it's interesting to hear this, though. And I think that, like, even today, we still see examples of, but the Red Hot M10S example mostly comes down to positioning and knowing it will be the furthest team member from Red Hot when that goes off. So I feel like the interpretation of this could be a little loose. I think this could be a little loosey-goosey. I think that they've, honestly, though, for the most part, they've really been on point with it, though. Like, there hasn't really been something that I felt has really been outside of my control, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, when I think about something that's outside of my control, right? Like, what do I think about? Something outside of my control would be like, I don't know, I'm doing Brute Abominator, I'm doing M7, and like I'm playing Black Mage, and I'm doing enough damage that I'm third on the list. Both my main tank and my off tank go down. Suddenly I'm having to tank Brute Abominator, right? Which I had to do, and I actually made it through Neo Bomberanian Special. Made it through to the second phase of the fight, and I was like in chat, I'm like, Provoke, please, right? Like, I held in there for a bit. I'm not supposed to be a tank. What was the other thing I was doing? I was doing it like 2 days ago. I was in roulette doing something, and the tank went down. And then I'm having to, like, tank. The mechanic that actually killed me was quite literally the tank buster. The fact that I can survive in, like, more modern content on level and, like, just be a tank replacement for a bit is honestly kind of funny. Oh, you know what I was doing? I think I was doing Dead Ends. I think I was doing Dead Ends and Counter 2, if I remember correctly, the War Mech. Yeah, I think it was the tank buster that ended my fun. Otherwise, I would have been fine. Yeah, because the tank went down, and I was having to, you know, kite the boss. And, like, oh, God, I love Black Mage. Black Mage gets away with some silly stuff, especially with Mana Ward. But, like, I mean, at a certain point, you just don't freak out. At a certain point, you just have to take it in stride, right? And then allow the tank enough time to actually get back up and provoke off you. I see what's going on with this. I very much see what's trying to be communicated here. I don't know I don't know what limitations we're necessarily working with, though. I think that would require a little bit more from an interview than what is being relayed.
That wouldn't last, though. On March 29th, the third day of progression, a post appeared on Reddit. A clear had come in. A group had defeated Turn 7.
Good stuff.
Shinra had posted their clear. The European team had done it. But upon a refresh, it turned out that something was amiss.
Oh no.
There was not one clear post, but two. Collision had done it too. World First and World Second had both been claimed, and based on the timestamps, had happened within 1 single minute of one another. Much to their chagrin, Shinra had actually killed it after Collision. Barely. Collision had taken World First and Shinra had taken World Second on the same pull within a single minute.
That's
2
wild.
entire days of progression on a battle, with the victor being decided by less than 1 minute. More than that, Collision had taken their second win of the tier. They were well on their way to the clean sweep. With 2 groups neck and neck moving on to turn 8, it really did feel like Collision and Shinra were equally matched, and would remain so for the rest of the race. Later that day, Blue Garter cleared once more, taking the podium, though by no means in the position that they would have hoped for. But as Turn 8 progression got well and truly underway, it was here that the second coil race would take a sequence of truly unexpected twists. After Melusine falls, the adventurers continue on the elevator deep into the central decks, a huge maze filled with Allagan automatons. Through the maze is
I know exactly which one this is. I want to see how they solve this. This is going to be wild.
their objective, though it is clear that the small fry skulking the corridors are not the only threats that block the way. The trash packs before the boss here take the form of a sequence of clockwork enemies, akin to those that make up the main threat of Binding Coil's 4th turn, separated by jump plates and armoured bulwarks. These once more are easy to defeat, with Shinra and Collision both surging through without any issue whatsoever immediately after their nail-biting Turn 7 victories. At the end of the line, their main boss of the floor, the Avatar, awaits them. Turn 8's boss is one fondly remembered to this day by many that tackled it at the time, one which exemplifies the design decisions of old, presenting them in a way that can be overcome in so many different fashions, with advantages for each based on composition, group strength, and preference. Despite that, it was tough to find a working strat amidst so many moving parts in the early days of blind progression. The core of the encounter centered around these towers, found on the edge of the arena. They periodically charge up, stacks indicated by these glowing bars found on their sides, and will eventually reach maximum charge over time. When they hit max, they'll summon an enemy or arena hazard to deal with, throwing a spanner in the works for the party.
Okay.
These hazards included devastating raid wides that, if paired up with another mechanic, usually spelt an immediate wipe. There were also dreadnoughts that would apply intense pressure on the tank, bashing away at them until defeated, and sets of landmines that needed to be carefully detonated away from the rest of the party by one brave player.
Okay.
If 2 of these towers reached maximum charge at the same time, it would cause a wipe. Players could expedite the charging process by standing within the energy fields at the foot of each tower, taking damage themselves to do so, and weakening them from any further towers they may charge in the future. Because of this, it had to be utilised sparingly, when needed, rather than spammed to generate advantageous timings. It was a whole new language to learn, memorizing the symbols of what each tower did and gaining an understanding of which towers should be charged, when, and by whom in order to find success.
Okay.
During all of this, the Avatar is rooted to the center of the arena, regularly crippling the tank with high damage cleaves and blasting out gaseous bombs and homing lasers, which
Yeah, he doesn't really move now that I think about it. Yeah, he's kind of static, isn't he? Like, he doesn't really move. Interesting. I think the quad laser that he does, I think that's a nasty bleed if I remember correctly.
must be shared with the party and kited safely away from them respectively. In Phase 2, Brainjack takes control away from the main tank, forcing them against their will to attack their closest ally, immediately followed up by a cleave. Because Avatar's facing follows the tank, it's all too easy for the group to find themselves facing a party-wide tank buster if a sacrificial lamb isn't carefully chosen and positioned to receive the Mindjack tank's ire. Ballistic missiles begin to shoot too, and must be shared in various quantities to make their damage survivable. Too few or too many, and it quickly becomes problematic. As the final phase, 3, begins, all of these are coupled with Allergan Field debuffs, the most deadly of all. Allergan Field would debuff a player and count down. During that duration, it'd compile every single point of damage that player took throughout its duration, and when it hit 0, it would explode, pulsing double that accrued damage to the entire raid. This essentially forced groups to come up with strategies to solve all of the other challenges that didn't necessitate their full party, as at times some would just be unavailable to contribute without Allergan Field becoming an instant wipe. All of this creates an encounter that intentionally forces players to make tough choices, to be put in bad situations in the hopes that they come up with a creative solution. The towers being the core of the fight that must be solved immutably, but everything else surrounding them acting to remove players from being able to deal with tower mechanics, or dealing damage to the party in such a way that it makes those towers and Allergan Field more restrictive to complete.
I mean, yeah, like it seems like there's a lot of moving parts here, and that is definitely going to add layers upon layers of complexity.
It proved a wall, and progression slowed to a snail's pace as a result. Turn 6 had died on the first day, and Turn 7 on the third. Yet by the evening of the 5th, there had been little news from the frontrunners on their trials and tribulations against the Avatar.
This honestly doesn't surprise me that Avatar is a wall. Like, as I said, even unsync this thing is just absolutely weird.
But the problem, seemingly, was not actually the mechanics.
Okay.
They were difficult, yes, but these were the best FF14 players in the world. Puzzles stood no chance against them when they had extended hours on their side. They created a plan, played safe, and surged ahead. But in a departure from many of the Coil bosses thus far, Avatar featured a hard enrage at the 11-minute mark. The moment they got there, the raid immediately wiped and had to go again. This enrage was tight. It seemed impossible to overcome. Frontrunners like Collision and Shinra would make it to this barrier, but they wouldn't even be close.
Did they remove this monk animation, the swirling fists? Did they remove that? Because I don't remember this.
If they
Not
kept
current.
playing safe, they would hit the enrage, and in making big risks to allow their healers and tanks to output the extra damage that might push them over the finish line, they would inevitably run into survivability problems and wipe. It was so difficult to maintain the balance, and one misplaced homing laser or poorly managed Allergan Field would spell doom to the attempt. Without a bit of luck, it genuinely felt gear-gated. Groups didn't give up, but their confidence dwindled. But right at the end of March, pushing against the impending weekly reset, a report came in.
What is this HP? Is this simplified HP? Did they change this in the HUD? Like, what is this?
A group had managed to defeat Turn 8, the boss that had been considered gear-gated. The group moving on to the final battle in the tier, having claimed world first on the 3rd, was Blue Garter. From out of nowhere, they had surged into pole position.
Honestly, I think that the competition had probably stronger groups, like stronger overall players. But I think that our group was just really good. We enjoyed playing together, and like it really did like kind of click, that group did.
The groups and spectators alike couldn't believe it. How on earth had they done it? Was their damage so superior to the rest of the competitors? Surely not. They had figured something out that the other racers hadn't. That much was clear. It would turn out that the edge they had gained was the result of a realization that would make the other front-running groups feel like an April Fool in hindsight.
When we cleared the fight, we specifically like uploaded a screenshot and made sure we did not show the comp, because we knew like as soon as we showed a comp, other people are going to clear it.
Much earlier in the video,
Is it going to be summoner focused? Is it going to be dots? Because this thing doesn't move, right? So I would assume dots would go pretty hard here.
I talked about the power of Dragoon and its synergy with physical range, resulting in many groups running it. Warrior, too, had been buffed and found its way alongside Paladin into the majority of tanking pairs. But I also mentioned that...
Oh wow, there were only 2 tanks in the game at this point, right? Because Gunbreaker was what, Shadowbringers, and Dark Knight was Heavensward. So we only had Paladin and Warrior back then, didn't we? Oh, that's weird to think about.
Monk had been buffed. Some groups were using a Monk, Blue Garter and Collision included, and were likely feeling that their choice had turned out great for them. Their comfort pick had been powerful, and their damage was rewarded as a result. Well, it turned out that Monk was stronger than anybody had quite anticipated initially.
This is the days where TP existed. TP was the enemy to like a lot of people, I think.
I have never heard of a positive comment about TP, to be fair. I joke about it so much. I've never had to experience it, thankfully.
Had a Bard, and the Bard could do TP Song, or they could do Foe Requiem, which increased the damage of your casters. Everyone else was like, oh, Foe is so much better. We figured out pretty early on that Monk is kind of insane if you just give it TP to do its job.
As long as you put gas in the car goes. Weird concept.
This is back when you could just have one monk do Dragon Kick and the other monks do Boot Shine only.
Blue Garter had noticed the significant advantage that Monk posed in this encounter and decided to go all in. They decided to test their hypothesis that Monk was the key to their ticket into turn 9.
I think we owe that success to being willing to just try it, to just iterate a ton on different strats. And when someone has like some crackpot idea of like, hey, let's just throw 3 monks at it, then, okay, we're stuck at 10%. Let's just do it. I think the math checks out.
Our best attempt, I think, with doing a normal comp was like us wiping at 10%, and then we switched to triple monk and we beat it by like 30 seconds.
Bro, the triple monk. Is this why we have this day? Sorry, excuse me. Let me start from the beginning there. Sorry, I've been reacting for like 7.5 hours today. Because nowadays, isn't there a damage penalty for running multiple of the same job? So like if you have like 3 Reapers, right, you're doing less damage, right, than if you had like 1 Reaper and everyone's running a 1 of in like standard queue, right? If I remember correctly, you can't actually, I don't think you can double up in ultimate content either. So was this like, were these the days before that? Was this the cause of later updates implementing at some point if you double up on classes, you will just do less damage? Like, I'm curious where that falls into play here, because I feel like that, just being able to just triple pick monk and go ham, right? I feel like that's very Final Fantasy-esque in its own right? Because some of the older games, I feel like you could just triple monk or triple warrior or something, right? Easily. But like, I feel it definitely leads to a best in role style, right? Best in role job, and I think they want to avoid that.
The plan was simple. One monk would focus purely on maintaining Dragon Kick uptime, providing the blunt resistance debuff that increases the DPS that each monk attack does. The other 2 would reap the benefits. After just a handful of pulls, it was clear that they had cracked it. They would further cement their dominance in turn 8 by claiming world second shortly afterwards, with Blue Garter's second group using their accrued information to shoot past the competition.
The turn 8 double clear on the same night before weapons I think is one of my proudest achievements as one of the leaders of the FC.
Good stuff.
Because it meant that our approach to having depth in the roster and having people feel comfortable with mixing and matching and swapping in and out, everyone was really psyched and stoked to be like pushing at that point in time. It was still pretty early in Prague, so like people weren't burnt out yet. After the team that I was in cleared, I hopped into the voice chat with the other team. We were cheering them on, and they knocked it out like I think an hour or two before reset. It was like down to the wire, I'm pretty sure.
Even Square Enix couldn't believe this turn of events. They had expected Turn 8 to fall sometime during the second week of progression, and seeing a week 1 kill had come as a big shock. A true testament to the ingenuity and commitment that Blue Garter had displayed in their non-standard setup. A staff member of Square Enix's community team curiously contacted the raid group for information, as well as video evidence of how they managed to pull off the win.
The dev team realized that they needed to, I guess, be closer to the pulse of like what was actually happening in prog groups. Like
I feel like, wouldn't they have access to this though? Wouldn't they be able to just pull the comp files? I don't know what 14 devs specifically have. I don't know what they have access to, right? Like, I'm assuming, like, you know, if a report were to be filed, they have access to party chat logs, right? Like, they need to be pointed to, like, oh yeah, we need to be pointed to, like, am to poor keep hard at 15:27 on January 26th, right? And I'm sure they'd be able to pull the logs, right, of that instance. I mean, I guess, yeah, like, it makes sense that they reach out, right? They make sure that they, like, reach out and, like, hey, like, what happened here? How did this get cleared, right? Just out of curiosity. But I feel like they'd be able to pull party comp information like that, right?
needed to like be closer to like what was happening. So the community team reached out to some of the progression teams. I'm pretty sure we weren't the only ones. And we're just kind of like monitoring progression more closely. They saw how good players were in general, you know, going from binding to second and then final coil, seeing how good the player base was becoming. And then they massively overcorrected for Heaven's Word. They wanted to verify what was happening. They didn't think that we had done anything wrong.
I don't think they actually thought it was possible to be cleared that early. I think that was the thing. And then we killed it and they were like, oh, wait, how did you guys do that?
Unlike turn 6 and 7, this time was a blowout. There was no second place finish within the same minute, hour, or even day. It wouldn't be until the late hours of April 4th that World Third was claimed by Collision. They too had come up with an interesting strategy that had bore fruit and enabled them to pass the DPS check, though an entirely different approach than BG's. They had opted to field only a single tank alongside 5 DPS players.
Can you do that? I thought there were role restrictions. I actually have no clue how that works. I would assume you need role restrictions unless you're doing unsynced content, right? Surely. Maybe? Huh.
It had made certain mechanics such as the brainjacking slightly tighter to execute, but there was nothing in Avatar's fight that required a second tank as such, so it was no problem to adjust to this new composition. This strategy quickly rose to prominence as many groups adopted the exact same 5 DPS 1 tank setup to defeat Turn 8 themselves, and many used it elsewhere too. It became the de facto T8 advantage, and Square Enix took notice. In the coming raids, they would pay special attention to ensuring that 2 tanks would be encouraged in battle, and in many instances would be necessary in order to find success with all but the most broken and difficult bypasses. In the time that Collision had been working towards the clear though, Blue Garter had pulled away. Days of advantage to focus on the final challenge in turn 9. In the days between Blue Garter's World First and Collision's 3rd place finish, a number of other wins were logged, illegitimate kills using cheats to manipulate the Z-axis of their characters.
Man, come on. I mean, even back to 2.2, 2.3, we're still seeing stuff like this.
They would end up above the arena and the Avatar would be unable to do anything aside from slowly succumb to their attacks. 24 service accounts were suspended in relation to the cheating a few days later, a clear sign from the developers that they were deadly serious about dealing with those that didn't want to play fair. As Turn 9 begins, the adventurers arrive at the Hollow Charts, the final level of the second coil. But to their surprise, the arena resembles the Riven Road down to a T, the exact same location that the Warriors of Light had defeated Nel Vandarnus 5 years ago at the end of 1.0. Waiting for them there is Nail, seemingly reincarnated, but starkly different. The two parties trade blows, and Nail claims that she will bring about a second calamity, transforming into a dragon-esque beast clearly modelled after Bahamut itself, the product of tempering and corruption. And the final battle begins. In a departure from the other 3 turns, Nail's battle is firmly segmented into a sequence of unique phases, with only minor mechanical carryover from one another. Rafflesia, Melusine, and Avatar had taken a core concept and used it throughout their runtime, ever adding new components to the mix as the foray had gone on. This change had felt fresh, welcome. The first phase was a dance constructed of a mixture of spreads, stack, in and out dodges, and unique tank busters, introducing the first appearance of the now iconic FF14 attacks Lunar Dynamo and Iron Chariot.
I'm gonna be honest, I thought Nail was a dude. I have no idea. I have zero context for this character.
Every tank buster would leave a ticking time bomb on its target. When it finished counting down, it would explode, and allies had to give its victim a wide berth in order to survive the blast. Everything was given a dynamic element by Nail's penchant for leaping across the arena, landing on a player, and then rapidly channeling a dynamo or chariot, forcing the raid to scatter like flies being swatted. Players would periodically need to bait the positioning of meteors as they dropped to the ground, mitigating the heavy damage they accrued and keeping them spread apart from one another. Once a third of her health is depleted, Nail exits the stage for the time being, giving way to the ads phase. More meteors, so many that it becomes all too easy to run out of space and cause an overlap, followed by a subsequent explosion. But once the art of carefully positioning them had been mastered, in amongst the random targeting and overwhelming damage, the golems begin to spawn and the real challenge begins. Each of these golems executes different mechanics, signified by their colour, and they will swap colours periodically to force the raid to learn every possible set.
That's mean. I love that. Oh, that's mean.
3 golems which must be split. 2 can be taken by tanks easily enough, but the third must be handled by the rest of the party, as they soak its auto attacks and attempt to lead it away from its peers safely.
I guess if you have to spread them, that makes sense then. I'm like, wouldn't it be possible just to double up? Like, I mean, even in like M10, right? Twink 182, like, because you can provoke Red Hot and Deep Blue on you. Like, you can have both attacking you. But if you're supposed to spread them because there's going to be like negative consequences for having them too close together, that would make sense. So you're going to have the Black Mage or the Monk that actually goes the distance.
Golem comes close to a meteor, it will eat it, growing in size and becoming stronger as a result. All of the meteors must be removed from play, or they will force a wipe. But if a single golem eats more than 3 meteors, they will cause one themselves. It's simple at heart, but the execution was often too close for comfort. Blue Garter, using their considerable lead and the resources at their disposal, had come up with a unique approach to Turn 9 progression. Instead of their 2 groups acting as entirely separate entities, they combined their resources and worked as a community. A win for either team would be considered a win for the free company.
Honestly, respect.
It had pros and cons. We tried to really push the idea that like a victory for the FC is a victory for everyone. So when we succeed together as an entire FC, as an organization. It's tough to balance that out between like individual goals. Like people want to push themselves and do really well, and it's always great to like see yourself in that screenshot when you clear the fight. We tried to kind of figure out a way to where we could have two really, really good groups, and we wanted people to feel like there was no team 1 and team 2, and we would eventually have one team that would be pushing the hardest for World First, because people have real life work, school schedules that would eventually cause them to taper off their gameplay.
They discussed strategy as a collective, substituting out players so that both groups could profit and take healthy breaks. As week 2 begun, the break away from work and real life responsibilities faded for most groups gunning for first place. So using this approach helped Blue Garter invest more hours, more resources, and keep their players fresh. The plan was that eventually, when they were in sight of making a push for the kill, they would easily be able to field the party that they believed would give them the best chance of success, and then go for the win.
I mean, with a second clear not being too far behind, right? I mean, at that point, everyone really is going to be able to understand the fight. Really, everyone's going to really be able to, like... I mean, that second clear is going to come not long after, right? Let's be honest.
First phase went quickly for the most part, aside from the largest sticking point in meteors. They targeted randomly, and players could receive multiple, one after another, and in unlucky patterns, the free space filled up extremely quickly, often causing wipe states due to overlap. With such high damage incoming, if the healers constantly in sequence received meteors, it made the entire cycle devastating to have to handle.
Sorry, I mean, honestly, even unsync, these meteors hurt. At 90, these things hurt.
Blue Garter tried what their minds immediately went to as a solution, which was to Mario Kart around the edge of the arena as a group, but it didn't bear fruit. Consistency was an issue.
Mario Kart wouldn't have worked for us. Like, it literally would not have worked. I think we tried it. I didn't want to think that the fight had been designed to encourage you to run around in a circle for a minute. But yeah, I'm pretty confident that Mario Kart would not have been... we could have done it, but I don't think it would have been reproducible. We couldn't have used it for clears. And one of the things that came up often in our strategy discussions was not necessarily, will this strat work for this next attempt, but will this strat work for re-clears? Like, is this strat good enough for us to keep on doing it and get past it to the next step every time? Because if the strat isn't good enough to do that, then we need to fine-tune it more or rethink it.
So what we did is we spread out around the room using the floor as markers for where we would stand. And essentially, each person would have 3 spots that they could drop a meteor at. And essentially, if you got a meteor, you would start in one position. If you get a meteor, you move to your right. And then if you got another one, you'd move forward. So you'd make a triangle out of the meteors.
This flew in the face of what many of their competitors would turn to when they made it through the same mechanic. Most saw the potential of Mario Kart and committed to it, even if, in rare cases, it could make things overwhelmingly difficult to manage. Once Blue Garter...
I mean, at that point, you're just going for sheer number of clears, right? You're trying to just profit off of the sheer number of times you're running this, and you're just kind of writing off, yeah, that was a bad run, right?
Who had reached this point first by virtue of the extra days ahead of the pack they'd earned, managed to fell the golems twice over, clearing away each and every meteor in the process. They were treated to this.
Get ready for the possible next thing.
I love the art. That's a long cast on a Medica too.
What? Mega Flare? She Mega Flare! Oh, look, what?
Keep your shit together, pay attention.
Tank LB, stay alive. Gotta see as much as possible.
The second half of the duel with Nail changes in tone entirely as she cracks open and transforms the arena itself by calling in the Heaven's Fall pillar. From there, the old is forgotten and new challenges are introduced. The tower will keep impaling the room periodically knocking raiders away and forcing them to avoid crackling AoE patterns telegraphing from the center, whilst Nail herself begins to use stronger auto attacks, a multi-hit tank buster called Bahamut's Claw, and the room begins to be pelted with supernovas that reduce playable space.
I know that Diabolos Hollow, right? Heaven's Ward Alliance Raid 3, the final Diabolos. I know he hits really hard, but if I remember correctly, I think that's because all of his autos like guaranteed crit, right? Like there's something there. I don't remember what it is offhand, but if I remember correctly, I think it's because he auto crits and that's why he hits hard. I wonder if it's just an increase in damage, or I wonder if Nail's just critting a lot. I also don't know any other boss who just auto crits like that.
She also summons dragons to aid her, the Ghosts of Mericidia, which immediately become a priority target, often the recipient of a sharp melee LB3. The Ghost of Mericidia and Nail as well would apply Garrote to players, with the former stacking it up on repeat until defeated. 9 stacks of Garrote meant immediate death, whilst defeating a Ghost of Mericidia would drop a few precious puddles on the ground, which could cleanse the debuff entirely. Keeping stacks as low as possible and cleansing them appropriately became key. After solving and slogging through all of this though, came Nail's greatest challenge. Her final phase featuring what became the wall for the entire last week of progression. Dive bombs.
What is that mark? Twister?
Ooh, yeah, this one.
It's a dive bomb.
It's
That's dive bomb.
I love this marker.
Holy shit. That's fucking beautiful.
It's the funny marker.
The arena's flat.
Oh god.
There are no checkpoints in this either, if I understand it correctly. So that means you're doing this fight from top to bottom every single time.
Dive bombs in turn 9 were all about situational awareness and maintaining control within a sea of RNG. Dragons would appear flanking the arena walls, preparing for their attack. They would target players, prime themselves, and then they swoop, and chaos reigns. What became such a sticking point about this mechanic is that in order to find success, the group needed to move in unison. There needed to be some level of chemistry. Ideally, the dragons would be baited to fly across the edges of the arena, and the party could safely dodge away using the majority of the space. But with the dragons spawning in random positions and targeting random party members, this was easier said than done.
It's impossible to go back to that time when we just didn't know what the game was. We didn't understand enough about the game. And so
I mean, I would assume you would pull from other raids and other games, right? Whether you came from Lord of the Rings Online, because I mean, I've been playing that since 2008 or so. World of Warcraft obviously is something that exists and has existed for many years at this point. So you're pulling from other games, and like, yeah, you technically had 1.0, but yeah, this is like what 2.0 being the launch of Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. This is like patch 2.3. I mean, try starting and try level skipping to Dawn Trail, and by the 3rd dungeon, know what you're doing, right? Like, I feel it's kind of the same, right? And I think this is also just an age where, like, I don't know. I mean, like, well, this would have been like what, circa 2014 or so, right? So this would have been something where, like, yeah, the internet existed, right? We clearly see posts from Reddit and stuff like that, right? But I don't think it's necessarily like, you know, Hector Strat day 2, right? It's not quite. It's not quite that. It's not quite what we see nowadays still, right?
If you get hit by turn 7 or turn 9 and all this shit is happening and you just don't have that library of references to go back to.
Practically every group at the forefront handled this a slightly different way. There were entire discussions and threads on forums and message boards on the easiest way to break down this challenge. It just seemed so difficult. Images like this one show how even when you break down the dive bombs into their most basic form, they were still a difficult pill to swallow.
It's a lot
Cycling
of
in between iterations of dive bombs were dynamos, chariots, leaps, stacks and spreads returning from phase 1, as well as the introduction of fire, ice and thunder. Those dragons, ever the menace, will shoot rocks of solid ice at players, giving them the Ice Bitten debuff. Tethers will appear too, and being hit by them gives the Fire Scorch debuff. Be hit by the same element twice in a row without cancelling it out with a lash of the opposing one, and death is both instant and painful.
Are the fights still in the game unmodified today? I'm trying to think back, because obviously I did this unsynced. I don't remember half of this. I mean, maybe it's something I'll have to go through as, like, I don't know, maybe a tank and just, like, I don't know, eat hits and maybe auto stuff. Maybe the autoing might... I don't know. Like, obviously I couldn't GCD stuff, or even OGCD stuff. I wonder if it's still the same and unmodified, or if they've changed it. Because they've changed stuff since A Realm Reborn, right? Oh, what is it? Totorak. Totorak used to be completely different as a dungeon. It used to be a maze. And now it's very simplified. I don't know what Totorak looks like pre 6.4. 7.0, Halatali changed. We no longer have the fire sprite first encounter, or at least in the capacity it was. Halatali's changed completely. Like, yeah, there's some stuff we've changed, and it makes me scratch my head and wonder if they've also changed Bahamut or tweaked Bahamut as well.
Thunders would force targets to spread, often intersecting with dynamos, chariots, fire, and ice to create tight formations of safety in amongst the far-reaching danger. It was an absolute mess. The enrage was of no real concern to those at the cutting edge because, with so many plates spinning all at once, inevitably they ended up toppling long before groups were able to reach it in the first place. Nail's battle ended up being the breaking point for many. Collision suffered a number of member losses throughout progression, either due to lacking availability, motivation, disagreement, or a mixture of the three, and the group had to go on a recruiting spree to even continue, tearing precious knights away from a roster that was already on the back foot. Interestingly enough, and on a slight tangent, one of their eventual recruits was one of the tanks from Blue Garter's world-first Twin Tania clear. The player in question had taken a short break raiding with their own FC of friends, but the drive to push for a top placement never really left, so they had taken action. Blue Garter suffered too. The Free Company's leader and one of the main roster had to move house across the country during the second week, and so the team subbed in a member from the second group, making their own adjustment to the team, one which they became more and more convinced had the mettle to claim another world first tier completion for their community. Their new addition brought with them a tombstone weapon, and the precious additional DPS was definitely welcomed. But evening by evening, pull by pull, execution improved. In the case of Blue Garter, as they reached Nail's final phase and came face to face with dive bombs, instead of investing precious time into piecing together a strategy that everyone could understand and execute, they took a more time-sensitive approach. One or two players were adept at figuring out the dragons innately. It was the type of puzzle they were just naturally strong at solving.
That's actually, I think there are puzzles that people are just going to be better at solving. Zoralja, how his like the light sword plates, whatever those are, dude, I can't do those. I physically cannot do those. Like, my brain just cannot process that kind of puzzle. Like, I know it's basic. It's specifically the one where you start, like, he'll do the swords, and then it's the ones that, like, cross the wires, and then they go to a completely different line. That's the one that really messes me up. And that's the thing, is I'm not naturally good at that kind of 3D spatial awareness. I'm just not. That being said, I mean, I can weave and bob all day around certain mechanics. It's just everyone has a different skill set, and sometimes you just have to danger Dorito someone else because they can just solve it better than you can. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just recognizing your limitations.
And they would just command the others, shepherding them to safety.
When we got there, I remember we were trying to learn it, and we were like trying to figure out if there was like a pattern to where the dragons spawned. We could never really figure it out. I was literally like not even attacking the boss half the time. I was just looking at where the dragons were, and essentially our strat was just figure it out
we didn't have the thing that we wanted, which was a strat that would work every time. We were so close to killing the fight, and we had people who could solve it. So we said, I know you got a lot of shit to worry about right now. Can you just solve this mechanic for us so we can get the clear?
Risky, but as long as they gamed hard enough, it was winnable.
7.28.
Oh, shit.
Is this in rage, maybe?
That's the enrage. I
This is
think,
in
yeah.
rage, yeah.
As he said, better be just in rage.
6.9%.
That was 13 minutes. That was. So it's probably a 13-minute enrage.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright, that's fair.
Alright.
That's the fight!
That is the fight, man.
Hell yes!
On the
That's a
evening of
fight.
April 13th, 2 weeks and change since the initial release of the second coil of Bahamut, Blue Garter strung together a pull.
Good old Bard.
Safe spot is over here.
Mark?
Split.
So I guess I have to ask, did they get rid of enrages in just like normal content? Because this is way back in 2.0, right? Like this isn't Savage. This isn't the Savage version of the only turn of Bahamut, which was second coil, right? Or the only coil that got it, right? Like this isn't Savage, which I totally misread at the start of the video. I thought this was T, but I'm honestly fascinated watching this either way. Like, did they get rid of it in normal content? Because I mean, I've gone like Wicked Thunder. I mean, she'll just keep repeating attacks, or like Twink 182 to Tyrants. Like they'll keep going. Like I have had 2 Great Walls of Fire. No, sorry, I think I had a run. I think we had 3 Great Walls of Fire. Like some runs can take forever depending on party comp and player skill. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's very hit or miss, right? But sometimes if a group is struggling, it does take longer. Did they get rid of enrages in normal content? Have they just strictly put this on like higher tier content? I mean, I assume Ultimates still have it as well, right? Playing a perfect game, essentially, right? Like, I'm trying to think if I've ever ran into an enrage mechanic in like normal content. I think maybe. I don't remember it. If so. And I definitely haven't seen anything in like Arcadian, at least normal Arcadian, which is what I run. I haven't gone to Savage yet. Nothing in normal Arcadian. Because eventually, like, Lindworm, yeah, it does his phase 2 stuff. Like, eventually, he phases, right? But then that's in a completely separate... But, like, it just rinse repeats, like, ad infinitum, right? I don't know if there's an actual hard enrage. Maybe if it's, like, 20 minutes. But even then, look, if you're 20 minutes on a section like that, like, wow. Like, something has happened in the party.
I will be collapsing in B, move away from B. Pots.
Limit break time.
Okay, the markers do exist. Okay, they just weren't using the markers before.
I need big mules. Tabor.
Man, that push, though. Yeah! Good stuff.
I fucking love all of you guys. Yes!
Too powerful.
Yes!
Congratulations.
Fucking dead.
Fucking good job, guys.
It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was enough. If anything, the fact that the tail end of this successful attempt was so messy, pockmarked with deaths and subsequent recoveries, was proof of the fact that they deserved it. They played out of their skins, and it showed. Blue Garter had defeated Nail and claimed world first on turn 9 and on the tier. They had cleared turn 8 week 1, shocking the game's own developers. They had taken Binding Coil, and they had taken Second Coil. They were categorically the greatest free company in A Realm Reborn, and nobody could contest that, no matter what the future would hold.
2 in a row.
Just over a week later, in the 56th letter from the producer, a segment Naoki Yoshida used to run regularly alongside the live letters, he mentioned the win. In amongst his recounting of the then recent PlayStation 4 version release and his excitement at promotional events for the Chinese version of the game, he left a small but significant message.
I mean, didn't we get... how long has the Chinese version been delayed for? Because I know we have a Chinese version. Isn't it just A Realm Reborn? I thought that was a fairly recent thing, all things considered. Was it? Maybe? I could also be crazy.
Exceeding our expectations by leaps and bounds, we were astounded to find the final turn of the second coil of Bahamut has been cleared by an intrepid group of players, hailing from the Order of the Blue Garter. Congratulations, your skill and commitment is an inspiration to adventurers everywhere.
I think this makes me sad knowing what happened in T and knowing what happened in Top. Like, I feel like that really... those events really shook the raiding community because some groups just decided they did not want to play clean. And it makes it harder for stuff like this to happen nowadays.
We kind of inherited this like old school raiding mentality of like, we're not going to talk to anyone, we're not going to share strats, we're not going to discuss things publicly except for like, you know, some very brief like front-facing statements on like forums and stuff. So for second coil, yeah, we weren't like sharing strats, we were reading what people were posting publicly. We had some pretty crude spreadsheeting going on internally. I've talked a lot about like how good everyone else in the group was, and like I don't think I'm that great of a player, but the one thing that I did that I'm really proud of is translate and mediate. So when you have a bunch of really smart people who have different perspectives on how you should solve something, trying to figure out that middle space where, okay, how do we approach this in a way where we can make sure that everyone feels heard and understood and that we're moving forward together as a group? Like, that was my biggest challenge, and I didn't always succeed, but that was something that I worked the hardest at in our group specifically, because I knew that other people would figure out the strats. I knew that other people would play better than me, would do more DPS, but what I could contribute was trying to make sure that everyone got to that same page faster, trying to shortcut that process.
No, I mean, I get what he's saying. I relate to it. I mean, as someone who's ran Destiny raids, I mean, it's like just having that communication helps. Like there are players who are just going to be better than you. I've seen people do insane stuff like Xenophage and Pantheon. I've seen people do not Xenophage, Worm Gun. Oh, what was it called? Parasite? I think it was Parasite. It's the heavy solar worm grenade launcher that you just store up stacks on, right? I've seen some people do insane stuff that I just won't be able to recreate, right? Like, and that's not to say that I, throw my hands up and just say people are better than me, right? Like, I get good, but I only get good to a certain point, especially if I don't have players better than me to play around with. And even then, right? Like, I think on this very channel, I think there's a stream up that I have of teaching Ruder Nightmares. And I think that I think the person who joined off of Party Finder literally soloed plates by well skating, and it was insane. I'm just not that good. But whether it be that individual was awesome, and then they honestly finished planets and just left. Like, what a chat. But sometimes you'll have issues that you have to mediate. Sometimes you'll have things where unfortunately, maybe someone's ego gets in their way, or someone thinks that, it needs to be solved in this specific way. It must be solved this way, when they're like half correct. It needs to be solved, but it's not being solved in the way that they expect it to, right? I mean, there's a number of things that go into that, honestly. So I get that. I get that there is also the need to mediate, and yeah, sometimes you do need to mediate some stuff, right? Especially when tempers flare, right? I can tell you, I do lose patience when somebody just like doesn't say doesn't have accountability, right? Like if I'm running Root of Nightmares or Vault of Glass, say Vault of Glass, and we're on oracles, right? And somebody shoots the wrong oracle, just tell me you shot the wrong one. Hey, I'm sorry, hey, it happens, right? And we laugh about it, right? When nobody speaks up and it's clearly just the raid goblins out of left field somewhere that, no one in the group's responsible for shooting the wrong oracle, what's going on? That's not the kind of group I like to be in. Just take accountability. If someone yells at you, they're clearly the problem, right? It happens. It's a game. Mistakes happen, right? Just work together to overcome it. So I can honestly relate to a lot of that. Not obviously not, at the level he is, because he's managing an entire FC, right? I have an FC of 1, right? But I definitely get what he's saying, and I definitely get the sentiment.
Collision, overcoming their roster struggles, would eventually take second place, and from there the floodgates opened and the general raiding populace began to etch their tier completions in history too. The second coil would be remembered as a raid much more positively than the previous one, more complex, more fulfilling, and more interesting.
What class gets fever and virus as dots? What?
If such a positive trajectory were to be continued going forward, the future of FF14's raids and of the world first race was one to be truly excited about. FF14's world race and its community is an ever-evolving Ouroboros. Competition is constantly rising, and with it ours, expectations and the size of teams. Whilst a raid is an 8-man group, nowadays many top competitors have an entire squad of support members, there to aid in analysis, strategy, and offsetting the mental load from the players in instance.
That's actually one that threw me off, and Destiny really brought that one up specifically. It's really weird because you'll have 7 or 8 people in a Discord call, right? Your fire team is 6, and person 7 is analyzing, person 8's their whole job is to do callouts, right? And it makes sense, but until I had been in a Discord group that actually did that, I had no understanding of how that worked. The stuff like that fascinates me. I love that. I would love to facilitate stuff like that. But, something adults, something time, something people generally being disinterested by Dawntrail, something 14 kind of blinking out in popularity, which is unfortunate because a video like this is very well put together. And it's always sad to see good Final Fantasy content not reach the absolute heights I know it can. And, part of that's the algorithm. Part of that is I think that 14 is just a hard game for people to get into. It's why they keep updating Aroma Born. It's why they keep streamlining stuff like Halatali. They're doing their best. It's still just, there's a big gap to overcome there. MMOs are already a niche genre. They had their heyday, don't get me wrong. Everyone used to have an MMO. Pirates of the Caribbean Online, Toontown Online. I just blanked on the name. Yeah, Toontown Online, EverQuest, EverQuest 2, World of Warcraft. I mean, and people still play to this day. It's not to say that MMOs are dead by any means, as much as, people will tell you that. It's just a niche genre, and there's a niche amount of people who raid within the genre. So, you're going to have some, teams and players that get to know each other intimately well, right? Because, you're fighting against them, multiple raid races in a row. And I don't know, a community like that is honestly super cool to me. Just people being able to express their interests, express their love of puzzle solving and problem solving, mediating, working together to find the solution. I enjoy it personally. I think I acquiesced really well coming from Destiny over to 14.
Sleeping at all in a savage competition will usually directly equal giving up on World First with the lightning fast races of today. Quality of life has increased so much as well. Before you had to manually travel to the zone in the area of the raid to access it.
Oh, wow.
Raid groups were often tied to a free company or larger community rather than isolated in their own shells. Cross-world travel didn't exist. limiting the quantity of the player base that you could interact with and build relations with.
Which is actually really interesting going into 8.0. They're really talking about, because Ether's closed right now. It's been closed for a hot minute. We'll see when it opens up again. But a lot of the North American rating happens on Ether, which is generally pretty closed, right? So the fact that we're getting, rating cross data center, or however that's going to work, in 8.0, I'm very excited for it.
Yet, for all these positive changes that have occurred, something was lost. A sense of belonging, a place of community. In the increasing of our options, in the ease of our access, we have unwittingly floated out to a sea of isolation. Realm Reborn's races and Blue Garter's victories act as a reminder of the importance of that community.
Of course we wanted to win, right? Like, you want to win.
Naturally.
It's not a win at all costs type thing.
There's that social fabric that doesn't get talked about a lot when it comes to being good at video games. People don't necessarily talk about like team chemistry that much, but if you look at any discussion of team sports, it's a huge topic, right? Having a group of people that you genuinely care about, that you want to succeed with together, I think that is by far the most important thing. More so than mechanics or being good at strats or reaction times, it's really the people.
I would much rather somebody who I could trust to do mechanics, or at the very least just enjoy playing the game with, than somebody who said that they're in the top 100 at a game and just be an absolute just awful person to deal with. Like, there are personalities that I will just grate with, right? Like, there are personalities I will not get along with. And everyone has that, right? Everyone has those people that they're not going to get along with. There's things that are just going to rub someone the wrong way about specific people. That's to be human. That's human nature. I would much rather somebody, on my skill level or above, or even below, depending on how, receptive they are to learning, right? I would much rather someone who I could actually, enjoy the time with. Because if we sink 10 hours into a Savage Raid, we sunk 10 hours to a Savage Raid and had fun, right? We ate pizza. We drank. We had fun, right? Not, cold, calloused, well, you're just bad at the game, right? Or, I'm so much better at this, I should be better than this, right? I can tell you one of the personality types I clash with is the people who are very, I deserve the win. I deserve to be me. Very, I deserve it. Like somebody who's like, I spent $2,000 on this deck and then throws their deck on the table at the card shop, right? Just a very entitled mentality. I cannot get along with these people. I just can't. It very much clashes with me as a personality. You even hear it when I say, right? Where I'm like, if I put out a video and it doesn't do well, it clearly means I didn't do well enough. The video was too long. I wasn't reactive enough. I did XYZ ABC. When that's not always the case. And at a certain point, I have to admit, no, there's algorithmic issues feeding into this, right? At a certain point, sometimes it's out of your control. Sometimes it's something that you just reasonably have to look at, go, it happens, right? Yeah, we all have those personality types, and I think he's on the money with this one.
And I think if you care about the people you're playing with, then you do better, right? You play better for them because you're not just in it for yourself.
It exemplifies the virtue of working together, of building something that all can be proud of. Their victory belongs to them. Not just the 8 that beat the fight and got the achievement, but all of them. The additional groups in the FC that provided their time, energy, and players to help in prog. The crafters and gatherers that supported the team with items and consumables. The social members that cheered them on and helped to keep morale high when the wall seemed likely to never fall. The management that built everything, that built the foundation for what everybody would come together to call home. The wins belong to them all. They built it to be so.
When we had FanFest, I wish more members of our FC had been able to go out there. Square Enix's community team, Final Fantasy XIV's community team, knew that myself and a few others were going to be there. They invited us to go up on stage and do an interview about raiding, which was super fucking cool.
That's cool.
And then Famitsu reached out to us through the community team, and we did a short interview with them also. And it was extremely gratifying as an FC, as a group, to see us getting shouted out, on the Lodestone and then at FanFest. Definitely something I'm super proud of, and I hope that like everyone who participated in the FC at that point in time is still like proud of that to this day, because like it definitely didn't work all the time, but we tried to push, the FC motto. Like it wasn't just words. Like we tried to really push that perspective of like we are here to succeed together as a team, not as individuals, and we need to be humble about it, and we need to not get complacent. Some of my fondest memories from raiding aren't necessarily the clears themselves, but during Prague, we would finish, a 4 to 12 hour session, depending on, how far along we were. And then we would be like, okay, we've just been playing the game for 12, 14 hours, 16 hours sometimes straight, basically with like breaks for food or whatever.
Yeah.
We need to log off and immediately go to sleep so that we can start Prague again tomorrow. And then we would not immediately go to sleep. We would shoot the shit for another 2 hours on voice chat and fuck ourselves over for the next day.
I mean, sometimes you need that though. Like, I mean, it's a morale booster just being able to just bond like that.
And then people would wake up late, miss their alarms the next day, and be like, guys, come on, we gotta log on time. We agreed, but it was really fun.
Whilst nowadays many of them will have gone about their separate ways, this shared time connects them. Really, that's what MMO games are all about. Community, friendship, found family, and of course, some damn fun raid battles. This is the part where I would usually end the video, thanking you all for watching with a nice little capstone on the second coil as a raid to bid it farewell. But the second coil race wasn't quite over yet, and Lucrezia, one of the teams I made note of at the beginning, hasn't been mentioned. That's because this tier was more unique than any before or after, releasing a series of challenge modes afterwards with a race wholly of their own. But that story is one for next time. I think it'll be quite a lot shorter than this one, too. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. I have a Patreon, you don't need to support it, but if you do, it will allow me to keep uploading here more regularly. If you want to see the uncut version of my conversation with Tyreth and Caraway, it's available exclusively there, as well as any pre-release excerpts that I put up. The people on screen now are the reason I was able to make this one, and I'm greatly appreciative. If you do sign up, I have pre-release materials for future videos, as well as some exclusive content, and you'll be included in the credits of future videos. And of course, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I love this, dude. I love this kind of long-form content. I know I know the algorithm, it sucks, and it just doesn't like it. Even the base videos, right? Like, I mean, I've seen, shorts that get multi-millions of views, and it's like, really? This is it? This is what the algorithm's pushing, right? And honestly, this is great. Just having the ability to just have content like this, and I enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoyed this. That being said, thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun with this. It was really cool to kind of go back to go back to a completely different era of the game and learn about it. I'll probably go back and I'll probably watch this one first. I'll probably go watch the predecessor to this first, and then this will be uploaded a little out of order. So the predecessor will come out first, and then obviously it'll be like, oh wait, but you already reacted to this. I can't wait to see what we have in store. And I honestly been loving going through this. I have to hop off though. I've been reacting for about 8.5 hours at this point. I also got to do my roulettes today on 14. So thanks everyone for watching. I really do appreciate it. And as always, links are in the description down below. Definitely go check out Rinon, especially if you haven't. And I'll see you in the next one.